What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Marshall, and it is my goal with each episode of this podcast to share the stories, strategies, tactics, tools, and resources that will help you establish or grow your martial arts school. The Black Belt Business Podcast is brought to you by Easton.Online. You can find all of our digital courses, martial arts curriculums, and resources designed to help you enhance your business at Easton.Online. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Ricardo, thanks for coming on, man. How are you?
No, pleasure to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. I've been looking forward to talking to you about this kind of stuff because I know when I can remember the day Amal came back from your school, which is where he started to get more focused on, this business side of our schools. I remember he had like a life-changing experience. So yeah, I've been very excited to talk to you about it.
No way, man. I learned so much from them all. I think there was one time all you guys came down, you, Finney, and a bunch of the guys, and one of the brothers that had like a really good Nick, I think it was. He had like
Nick Klein. Yep.
A couple of you guys came down, and man, I've always learned so much from him. He's always been so sharp on the back end, always sharp on the mats too, but always so sharp on the back end of what happens at the school. I learned from him probably like as much as he would tell you that he saw what we did here,
Yeah. Where do you think? I think sometimes people hear this word like the business end of your school, and they start to get like it's like I don't run a business. Where do you think that idea comes from with especially like in the jiu-jitsu field? That idea that running your business, quote unquote, is not good. Like don't run a business.
To be honest, when someone would say something like that, I think they're a white belt or no belt as far as running a school, because there's always the idea that if you really love jiu-jitsu, you teach it out of your garage or your basement, and then you won't charge students, and you do it out of your goodwill, and that's fine. I mean, some people can think that way, but I think that if you really love jiu-jitsu, and if you want to serve as many people as possible, and you're really good at what you do, and you have a plan of continue to get better at serving people, at bringing people in and serving as many people as possible, then you have your name on a lease, or you have a name on a mortgage, and you have a big name on the sign, and there's deadlines to be met, and there's rent to be paid, and there's all sorts of things going on, right? It's the same thing with anyone. Like who makes a better car? The guy just building cars out of his garage, or Tesla, or BMW, or any of these companies. And that's not to say there is no space for the guy in the garage. That's a custom one-person collector edition, and that's okay. But my goal has always been to serve as many people as possible. And to be honest, man, it's a selfish goal, because I know that the best way to get better at jiu-jitsu is to train with as many people as possible. And my best way to be a better instructor is to teach as many people as possible. So in some ways I'm selfish, but in some ways it's like a symbiotic relationship between the amount of people you serve, the amount of training partners that you're going to have, the amount of problems that you're going to have to solve, and that makes you better at providing like a great experience for everyone.
I think there's always, like, if you don't have that duality existing, I think you're blowing it. Like, I do everything I do for myself, first of all, but then everything I do seems to happen. I do it for other people, but it fills my cup up so much. It makes me so happy. So is it like just altruism? No. And is it just the opposite of altruism, just giving away? No. You got to find that middle ground, which is what I think our schools need to be as well.
1000%.
So when you started your school, first of all, when did you start your school?
So my school started by accident, man. Like I moved here to teach at the Renzo Gracie Academy. Renzo was opening a school in Philadelphia, and he had a scumbag partner that he found out that this guy was taking stuff that wasn't his, and he ended up breaking up with his partner. and he closed this Philadelphia school down, and I had nowhere to teach. The New York positions were all filled. So one of the guys that was a former student at this Philly school said, "Hey, Ricardo, I have a friend that has a gym. You want to start at a racquetball court?" Just kind of how we all started, And I started at this racquetball court, and I was there for a while I was still fighting. And then I moved the school to like a legitimate location, and that's, I think, around the time that I knew Amal back from Brazil. But once the school started growing, and I had my name on the lease, and I was more serious. Then someone as serious as Amal wanted to come and see what we were doing, and we just exchanged ideas. And at the time, Marcio Feitosa came down a lot too, and we exchanged a lot of ideas. It was a pretty cool time to be a jiu-jitsu instructor then. It is a really cool time now, but we were all just trying to figure out what the sort of like the traditional martial arts guys had figured out a long time ago, how to serve more people. And I think that for sure a lot of how we see the landscape of Brazilian jiu-jitsu nowadays has to do with our mindset changing from the fight club mentality to I think as we got older, having schools that our own kids and families will want to feel like they want to be in, and people's students' families wanted to come in, and it was no longer that sort of like place that people went to. Nobody knew what happened. It was just like a really cool place, as if some of the people that go to like the yoga practice decided to do a fight club. That's kind of like what the jiu-jitsu schools became,
Yeah, and as they should be, right? Because we don't need that anymore. That fight club mentality, even the mentality. I feel like it's very important that jiu-jitsu schools lose the mentality of like when a visitor comes to the school, it's unnecessary to like feed them to the monsters, right? I want them to have skillful training. I want them to have good training, a good time, and not be like, oh my God, they beat the fuck out of me or something like that. Like that's those times are gone. We proved jiu-jitsu already. Fight club's gone. Like we hopefully are moving past those days.
But always be ready to dish out a beating if it's needed. Right?
If it's necessary. Yes.
Guys, I feel bad because sometimes guys will come from other schools and my school is mostly recreational guys. The pros like train in a completely separate class, and sometimes I'll get guys that come in and these guys look like they're trying to get ready for a tournament. Train with like a mom, you know what I mean? Like, or some recreational girl that trains at my school. And then if somebody shows up and they're not sensitive enough to understand that they're in a recreational practice and they want to act like a pro, then, one of the pros will take care of that.
Yes,
of course. For the most part, I'm open arms with people coming into my school. Like we do have uniforms. Like everyone in my school wears our uniforms. But if a visitor comes, like wear your own uniform, man. Like wear your armor. You know what I mean? Like you're a samurai too, just like we are. Like you wear your armor in our school. Like I don't make people wear my uniform if they're just coming in for a visit. Then if they come, I mean that's just my perspective.
Right.
But if they become members, then everyone wears a uniform, just like any sort of like private school.
When you think about some of the greatest obstacles that you've had in running your school, first of all, what were they?
I think the hardest thing, man, it's getting people through the door. I think most jiu-jitsu schools will find that if you could get people through the door and you could get them a positive experience on the mats, then they go from, maybe I can do this to like, I know I could do this. It's amazing. Like, I've never felt anything like it. Like, I want to do this, right? It's just, we still have a stigma. Like, people watch the UFC and, they have a remote in one hand and maybe a beer in the other hand. And, man, that looks really cool. It's awesome. But, like, I don't want to do that, right? Like, so a lot of people think that what we do at the jiu-jitsu school, it's still, even if you take away the punches, it's still pretty intense for most people, so I think that, right? Like I think every martial arts school owner would love to have more people coming in through the door. I think that's the sort of like first, like top of the funnel, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Yeah.
And then to me, a huge bottleneck, man, is white to blue belt, right? Like I think that the schools that are thriving are the schools that have gotten very good at getting someone from white belt to blue belt. And because from then on, man, they're off to the races. Like they're on their own, like the schools that have a difficult time is the schools that are, people are getting hurt, or people are getting, skin infections, or it's dirty, or there's a bunch of people with, on the environment is not super strong and nurturing to facilitate growth for someone that's just getting started. It's a little bit too intense, perhaps. Something like a basic thing of having a beginner's class and an advanced class and a kids class and an adult class, just kind of like throwing everyone in the mix. Maybe that's what it is, but for
How
sure.
did you overcome that obstacle, the going from white to blue? Because I think that's a huge one for a lot of people, because they're like, oh, they're here and now they train. So what were some of the things that you've done with your school to help people get from white to blue?
My sort of mentor who taught me a lot about, running a professional martial arts school, and you guys might have visited his school together. It's a Thomas Clifford.
Mm-hmm.
Say, Ricardo, like, all right, like you have, in jiu-jitsu, there's this sort of like performance mindset that, everyone that gets to a blue belt needs to be able to go defend their blue belt in a tournament and look okay, right? Like, let's just kind of start off of that, right? Like, you would like every one of your blue belts, they just got their blue belts, to go to a blue belt tournament at their age and weight to be able to do okay, right? Like hold their own, right? Like that's kind of like a measure. And Tom Clifford, call him Kyoshi, he would just say, Ricardo, like, how about, if 10 people join a school, 10 are going to become blue belts. One is going to be one is going to be the best. One is going to be the worst. And maybe one or two of them can go to a tournament and just sort of like hold their own. And the rest of them are just, recreational practitioners that their goals are different. They want to maybe just, learn enough self-defense so that they feel confident, or maybe they want to get to a certain level of fitness that they couldn't achieve participating in other group activities, right? Like, and I've truly embraced that, man. Like I looked at certain students that I've promoted to maybe a blue belt, a purple belt, a brown belt, and even black belt. I know that their performance level, when we talk about, an IBJJF competition, they'd be able to go out and hold their own. In a bracket, their age and weight, they would not be able to hold their own. And I'm perfectly fine with that. There's a lot of times when instructors are younger, like they sort of like hold that in their head and hold students in belts too long. I know that my guys that are supposed to be competitors are going to be solid, and I know my guys that are not supposed to be competitors are going to be solid for their own potential, right? Like, and I love having them on the mat, and I consider being a privilege to teach them. And they've brought me other students who are champions, and they've brought me other students who are not champions, and they've brought their family members to the school, and they are a big part of the academy, just as much as the guys that compete. If that answers your question.
No, that 100% answers the question, in the sense of just the mentality shift that you have to have, first of all. So second of all, are there some specific things that you did? Like, how did you go about, and I know you're big on the stripe system, right? Like we got the belt stripe thing from you. You showed that to us. So that was one of the things that you did, promoting people along the way of white to blue belt. When did that start for you?
And man, we've had this conversation before, privately, and you had asked me, Ricardo, like, do you guys still do that? And I was like, man, it's like on the mat. Sometimes we get so good at doing something that we forget how to do it, right? Like, and I kind of wish that I was still using the like a colored belt in between white and blue. And I know that's not 100% in line with perhaps necessarily the entire jiu-jitsu community, which I don't really care about that. I know kind of like where my guys stand and where our teaching stands, like in the realm of things. I just want people to practice jiu-jitsu, but for sure, I think recognizing people for their effort and not just their performance, it's super important. Whether we do that through stripes or through formally through stripes and belts, or we do it just one day, just pulling someone aside and say, hey man, like I just want to tell you, man, like I know that jiu-jitsu was really hard for you at first, but you've come a long way, and man, like I'm so proud of everything that you've accomplished on the mats. Like this is amazing. Sometimes people need that as well, right? Like depending on the person, but for sure, having a clear system to sort of reward people for their effort and their progress. Right? There is progress with effort, right? Like it's within everyone's potential. So I think that's instrumental, right? Separating beginners from more experienced practitioners as much as we can, or definitely having a class where we're focusing mostly on what the foundation of jiu-jitsu is, and then the recognition, whether you do it through stripes or belts. I think it's very, very, very important.
Yeah, this is one of those topics where I don't know. I feel personally like, look, what's the goal? The goal is for people to train jiu-jitsu longer. So what are some of the hangups? One of the biggest hangups is in that, like you said, white to blue belt. They have no clue if they're getting any better, because they're still, if they roll with somebody, for the most part, they're getting smashed. Right. So they see no progress. Like if you take a 2-stripe white belt and you put them, or somebody who would be equivalent of 2-stripe white belt, and you put them with one of your blue belts, most likely that blue belt's going to smash them. So like seeing that they don't see any progress. So how do you show them progress? You give it to them. You like, look, okay, you're progressing. Are you that good yet? No, but you'll get there. Look, you're on your way. Look, you're 2 steps in, you're 3 steps in, 4 steps in. And then they that can keep them training longer, so that they might even have the potential of becoming, for those instructors that are still worried about producing champions, they might have the potential of becoming a champion. Like they just haven't realized it yet. And that can happen. That happens for a lot of people, actually. You hear about, like, I think Busheshta just put something out the other day. Like he lost his first 8 tournaments in a row. So he wasn't. Alberto Crane lost his for a year. He went to a tournament every month for 14 months straight and never won a match. So like if you look at it, it's like those guys, quote unquote, were terrible. But are they?
Yeah.
So
time and effort, or effort over time will always yield results, man. It's inevitable,
I think one of the, moving on from the white to blue belt subject, one of the things that I think instructors or academy owners really struggle with is this idea that they need to grow their school. Like, we need to grow our schools, and you can't do every job, right? You can't teach every class, and you can't run the front desk, and you can't sell the memberships, and you can't clean the school. I think this is a big roadblock for a lot of people when it comes down to growing their schools. How did you first see that roadblock, and then how did you get through that roadblock?
You mean that like the instructor should be able to know how to do everything? Is that what you mean?
No, like you're the owner, right? But you don't do all of it, right? Like you're not there right now. You're not there. Do you still sell the memberships? I doubt it, right? Like you have somebody there that runs your desk, right? So how did you realize to go from, okay, I do everything, between I teach and I sell and I make the phone calls and this, to, okay, I need to manage. I need to start managing other people and training other people how to do this?
I mean, I think that like a great book for someone that's like seeking to learn a little bit more about that is the EMyth, right? Like where, it's the entrepreneurial myth, where whether someone's going to open a jiu-jitsu school or a CrossFit studio or a dance studio or bakery, right? It's the bakery in the book. In the book. So, it talks about, us as entrepreneurs and as small business owners not doing every task, and, slowly building a team and handing off some of the tasks so we could focus on less urgent, more important tasks for the sort of running out of the business, so we could kind of steer the ship a little bit more, right? I think that for me, quickly, like, I realized that where I wanted to go, I couldn't go on my own, like as soon as we moved from racquetball court into a bigger location, and classes were packed. Yeah. And we had more classes, and I'm teaching a class, and 5 people showed through the door, and and you have to welcome those in and schedule a time for them to come and take a class. Like, you realize, hey, like I'm gonna need help, right? Like, right. I'm gonna need to organize. I'm gonna need systems in place, and I'm gonna need some sort of like standard operating procedures for each of the things that are happening at the school, and then people are gonna need to understand how to do those, and then we'll have some metrics to measure how we're doing on those things, and then from there, you start to get a more stable business. Then it goes up and it goes down, right? Somewhere it goes down, and then it comes up with back to school. Then December it goes down a little bit again. But now all of a sudden you have this living and breathing thing that's kind of like on its own, and it's not as much trading, your time for money, which it becomes very hard, right? Like if you just teach a class and you're charging people like $20 or $15 or however much people charge per class, like it's hard to have your name on a lease or a mortgage that way, right? Like you gotta build some sort of like recurring
revenue.
Yeah. And just go from there.
I think one of the things that people struggle with in this is that you have a staff member and you're training them or teaching them and they do it wrong. How did you get over this part of like watching your staff member, do something wrong, make a mistake, cost you money, right? And then not yell at them and not be like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Like, what was that process like for you of like training the staff and, almost in the sense of like, you have a student and they, you send them out to the competition and they go do their armbar and they just totally blow the armbar. And for some reason we don't scream and yell at them, right? Like we just try to help them like do the armbar better. But when it comes to our business, sometimes we'll be like, yo, what the fuck did you just do that for? Like we've gone over this 100 times and now you just cost us $200. How did you do that with your staff like you do with your students?
I mean, we learn it on the mats, right? Like the first sort of way that we learn as teachers is just like, if you reprimand someone and you just kind of like, whatever, like you curse at them or you mistreat them on the mats, like, man, that just undermines your position as an instructor, right? Like I feel, right? Like some people have a more iron fist style of teaching. Like I'm like not that way. And as far as like dealing with people, like my sort of style is more like public praise and private reprimand. Like I'll call them in, at a time that's just us, or perhaps after the students left, or just before student shows up. Hey man, like, hey, come here, look at this mess over here on the floor. Like we can't have a school that's like completely dirty like this. Like I clean, you clean, everybody cleans, but like it's kind of like look-see-do. If it's dirty, we don't wait for somebody else to do it. Right? Like sometimes you're walking down the street, you see a piece of trash, you don't walk over it, you pick it up and you throw it in the trash. Why would we do anything different inside the academy, right? And I've had times that I've been soft, and I've had times that I've gone like too heavy on certain situations. But for the most part, I think that, having someone at the school is really conducive to having like a really good sort of like one-on-one. A lot of the people that I have, most of the people that I've had, any of the instructors I've had, they've always been my students. I've never brought someone that wasn't my student first. But, I've seen other people do that and not have any problems. And most of the staff that I've had train are students at the school. So I have had like a teacher-student relationship with them. So I've never had to like manage like a relationship with someone from the outside, sort of like inside the business side of things at the academy, like, so perhaps, other people that have run bigger operations or, multiple schools and things like that have had more experience with that. But as far as with me, any sort of like interaction I have with the world, man, I see through the lens of being on the mats. Like I try to treat people, how I like to be treated. And maybe that's not even on the mats. It's just the right way to be no matter where you are. And I thread softly. I try to leave every sort of room that I walk in better than it looked when I got in. And for sure, when I'm at the academy, like I'm paying more attention to everything and being more on top of things. But that's just sort of kind of like how I am,
I really liked what you said at the very beginning of that answer. Public praise, private criticism, right? Like when you have to talk to somebody, you bring them to the side. It's not in front of everybody. And obviously, we've all made that mistake before of doing it the other way, and we've paid the repercussions for it. So, yeah. You just, when you talk about your staff, and I think this is one of the things that people are very scared of with their staff sometimes, is like, okay, I teach this person to be a great instructor, and then all I'm doing is I'm going to teach them and they're going to go open right down the road for me and become my competitor. I don't feel that way. I don't have much concern with that. How did you get over that, right? How did you get everyone to jump on board in the sense of like, we're all in this together, and no one's leaving, right? Like, I mean, if somebody leaves, then they have such an amazing opportunity in front of them. How could I even think about saying no to them? Right? Like, so how did you get your staff to jump on board, and how did you get over that fear of like, oh my God, I'm going to show them what to do, and then they're just going to open to be my competitor?
Yeah, I mean, everyone can, like there's like, non-compete and things like that. And depending on the state, that's like not very enforceable. No, it's, as far as the teacher-student relationship and having someone teach at your school, it's pretty hard, man, than other businesses where you're dealing with like intellectual property and things like that. Like in jiu-jitsu, is alive, it's out there, right? Like it's not like our own property, but we do sort of piece it together and chew it up and serve it on a platter in a way that people, right? It's a recipe that's unique to each school, right? Like you could go to the supermarket and you could buy all these ingredients on their own, but the way exactly you do things and that Amal does things and perhaps how we do things, we'll have a lot of similarities just from our lineage, but there will be own sort of like twist to certain things. Right? It's very unique, and that attracts like your students, and maybe the way I do things would not be sort of like attractive to your students. But if someone wants to leave, man, like I really don't like, do I want that person in my school? You know what I mean? Like before I even think about where they're gonna open up, if it's gonna be 5 minutes or 50 miles, like hopefully I've had enough of an impression on them so that they're like, you know what, like, yeah, cool, I'm gonna go do my own thing, but let me really do my own thing and not just like try to go take Ricardo's student. Let me not try to take students from the place where I came up. Like forget about Ricardo, right? Like how about the place that sort of like brought me up into the sport, right? That gave me, what I'm gonna teach to other people. I think that's just sort of how I think. But when I think about someone that's acting in a certain way that's detrimental to the team, and perhaps and you get to that point, should I stay or should I go? I mean, like, should they stay or should they go? I think that I rarely want someone that is causing a ton of problems and going behind people's back and saying things. We've had like very few like through the years, but every environment is gonna have those. And I for sure want them as far away as possible, even if it means they're like, I want them outside my four walls, man. If they're across the street, it's better off than they were in there,
I agree.
Well, I know they're always going to take people, like there's always going to be people that are going to leave, like when someone like that leaves, and that's okay, like maybe there's,
For sure. As we wrap it up here, a couple last questions. First, when you're dreaming big for your school, like if you had like I don't know, in the business world they call them big, hairy, audacious goals. What would what when you dream big, what do you think of?
Man, to be honest, like my school, I think we could always get more students, like and I've learned that there's a limit to how many people you could have in an environment, Maybe I think I need to visit you guys, because I know that you guys have jiu-jitsu, you have striking, you have like a bunch of stuff like under the same room, and we're still pretty much only jiu-jitsu. We have like a small like a kickboxing program, But I think for sure to just serve more people, like especially because of COVID. I don't know if it's the same thing with you guys, but we haven't had the kids come back yet. You know what I mean? Like we haven't had that wave of kids coming in or coming back, and for sure like a wave of new kids coming in yet. There's been some, but not as much as the adults.
I think that hard thing is the summertime, right? Because the kids always kind of fall off in the summertime too.
And depending on where people are with vaccines, like kids are not, it's not available to kids yet, the vaccination, and depending on people's household and their own personal choice, I think kids haven't been back, but I like to get a ton of kids back in the program. But as far as number of students, like we're pretty good, man. I like to see some of my guys grow up and open their own schools. You know what I mean? Like I've sort of facilitated for a lot of my black belts have gone on and opened their own schools. It doesn't necessarily have to be with me as a partner or under me in any way, shape or form, but I just like to see. I still think there's more people that need to learn jiu-jitsu than people that know how to teach it well. So I'd love for my guys to go and open their own place and bring it to an area where jiu-jitsu is not available if they're smart, and instead of trying to compete for somebody else's students. But yeah, just sort of like keep doing that, man. I want to be, 30 years from now doing what I did today. Wake up, go teach a class, come home, relax a little bit, and get ready for nighttime.
Yeah. I like what you said, teach it well, though. I agree with you. I think there's more jiu-jitsu schools out there than jiu-jitsu schools that teach it well. And I think it's very important to be able to teach it well. Last question, of all the things that you could tell someone when opening or running their school, what would be the number one?
Find a teacher, man. You had a jiu-jitsu instructor or a mentor, right? Like find a mentor. Find someone that's done it well, that's done it effectively, that's going to sort of like guide you through the process, and someone that could kind of like, when things go wrong, because things are going to go wrong, like you could kind of bounce, ideas off their head, and they could quickly pick out like what's going wrong. You know what I mean? Like I had the privilege of having a couple of guys. One of those guys, Gene Dunn, was a big karate guy. He opened a bunch of schools, so I think we all learned a lot from him. And
everyone learned a lot from Gene Dunn. Yeah.
Thomas Clifford, he brought me to Thomas Clifford. Thomas Clifford was like a freaking genius. Like I learned so much from him. And then, watching Renzo's school grow, for sure, my times with Amal, just sort of like exchanging ideas, what you guys were doing, and having conversations with Amal saying, him sitting in his car, looking at a karate school and, seeing a bunch of little kids going in. And at the time, none of us had kids programs. And I was like, man,
right.
How the freak do these guys do it, man, And I'm all figured out, I think, before many of us here in the United States. And exchanging ideas with Marcio Feitosa too, like at the time they were just starting Gracie Barra here in the United States, and now Gracie Barra is huge. So I've had the privilege of great teachers, great mentors, but also great peers that I've exchanged ideas, and you need that, man. You need to be in a community where you have both mentors and the peers.
Just like you learned jiu-jitsu, right? You had to have people, you had to have your teacher, you had to train with people that are better than you. You have to train with people that are at your same level, and then you have to train with people that you're better than so that you can practice, right? You need all of this, but that comes with community, right? Join a community. That was a great answer. I agree.
For sure. And I'm not too in depth with what you guys are building, but I'm sure that you guys are leaving no stone unturned, that there will be a lot of, some incredible information that will sort of, have people bypass a lot of the problems that we've had, and just get to the level that some of the successful schools have been able to get, like a lot quicker.
That's what our teachers in jiu-jitsu did for us, right? Like their struggle didn't have to be our struggle. We had to have a different struggle, but we all need the struggle, but it doesn't have. But if we're repeating the same struggles, that's where the problem comes. So man, Ricardo, thanks so much for coming on. Tell everyone, if they are listening, where they can reach out to you. I know you're on social media, your website, your school, all that stuff. So tell everyone where they can find you.
I think if you just go to Google, Ricardo Almeida BJJ, my Instagram is Ricardo Almeida BJJ, so that's gonna pop up.
All of it.
YouTube's on there. I think my Facebook is Ricardo Almeida BJJ too, and my academy might pop up, but you guys are probably too far. But yeah, I'm around. You'll find me.
Yeah, you'll find them. All right, guys. Ricardo, thanks so much for jumping on. Thanks for giving everyone some tips and tricks that have I don't even know if they're tips and tricks, but I think they're long-tested ideas that you've been using to skillfully maneuver and grow your school. So thanks so much, Ricardo. Have a great day, man.
Thank you so much, Elliot.
Yeah.